Hello and welcome to another episode of How to Build a Theatre. My name is Phil Wilcox.
And my name is Edward McMillan.
And our podcast charts the creation of an English language theatre in Brussels.
I've just come off quite a sobering call with people in Brussels, as in the people of the city of Brussels, or more specifically the borough of Ixelles, about because we're still talking about permits and different logistical aspects of potentially setting up an actual physical theatre in Brussels, and it's just, as I say, very sobering. There's a lot of kind of boring things that you have to deal with. It's reality hitting home. You know, you have these great artistic ideas, these wonderful things you want to do, and then you're confronted by a bureaucratic process, which I'm quite familiar with bureaucratic processes, but still you're confronted with a bureaucratic process, and it's very difficult to see how to even progress given the obstacles that are faced.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I think a lot of organisations, arts organisations, have artists as heads, and that totally makes sense because they were maybe founded with the ideas that an artist in the industry wanted to make changes, or they wanted to see something that they don't already see, or even that they wanted to create opportunities for themselves and their colleagues and in the place, the place that they love and live. But of course, the artists don't necessarily, they're not born with the administrative skills and the skills that you're learning now. The good thing, just before you come back, the good thing I know is that having grown up with you, and I know that you have a very, very strong mind, you're very intelligent, and I know
thank you, Phil.
Do it. So I'm behind you.
But also I have I have experience in administration, bureaucracy, which is helpful. But I think what frustrates me a little bit in this instance is that no one can actually give you it because, and I love Brussels, but Brussels is very complicated and Belgium is a very complicated country, and no one can quite give you a straight answer on anything, and because there are so many processes which all overlap and all are kind of similar but not quite the same, and yes, I'm feeling a bit lost, essentially. That's how I feel this month. So our guest this month, I should say, is a wonderful lady called Heidi Wiley, and she is the executive director of an organisation called the European Theatre Convention. So welcome to the show, Heidi.
Hello, good morning.
Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, Phil, I would like you to ask you to do the honours of the quickfire question round.
It's also worth noting that we're coming from four corners of Europe today, which is quite fitting given the conversation we're going to have. And we've all got sunshine in the background. Isn't that lovely? Heidi's got this lovely wash of sunshine in front of her. I look like I'm ascending into the ethereal heavens because of the sun behind me, and you've got your clouds behind you as well. So Heidi, these are just some questions just to sort of loosen things up and also find out a little bit about you, build a little picture of you.
Go ahead, Phil, just shoot.
Here it comes.
Shoot away.
I see you might be looking at some notes there.
I have no notes. This is all very, very spontaneous.
Very good. Do you have a favorite season?
I love summer. I love going to the beach. And if I can even go into the water, because it's not so cold, that's much better. Even though I also love going to the beach in winter.
When you go out for dinner, are you a starter and main person, or a main and dessert person, or an all three person?
Well, if I can have a nice menu with all of the three, I would say yes. But otherwise, I would rather have just the entry and the main plan.
Mm-hmm. Are you a cat person, or a dog person, or another person, a bird person? Or
here my answer is very straightforward. I love and prefer dogs to cats, and I know one person who might be listening to this podcast now would not be so happy about it, but no, I grew up with dogs.
It's not your cat, is it?
No, it's not my cat listening to it.
Well, it's certainly me listening to it. I am not happy. I am definitely a cat person.
You're a cat person. You stayed silent.
But then I'll introduce you to some other people you might really have a good conversation with at work.
Now here's a bit more broad then. If you were to, speaking still on the subject of dinner though, it's something close to my heart. If you were to be able to invite a dinner guest from all of history, anybody you could pick from all of history to come to your house for dinner, who would it be and why?
Oh, just one person, that's a difficult one to choose. And
That is tough, Phil. Yeah.
I know, right? It's tricky.
yes, I would rather be ready to tell you what I would like to cook for
Go on then.
a
Yeah,
group of people.
Go on then.
Go
What
on.
would your dinner be? What would the ingredients?
Really, since I've been traveling so much ever since, and I love meeting people from different areas in the world, it's really nice to have a huge buffet of various specialties from around the world and share this with people that you're interested in, that you're really keen to have a good conversation with over a nice, a glass of wine, or like no pressure in running off somewhere soon and to enjoy the food. So that would be definitely something I'm happy to put up with.
Final couple then. Do you have a sort of morning routine? Do you have the thing when you get up, you think, right, before I think of anything else today, this is what I have to do: the shower, the coffee, the run, the yoga, whatever it is?
Well, if I will have this one day, I'm definitely going to let you know. It's I think life is just obviously it's very good to have a routine, but it's changing also frequently, also with different things coming up in life, different phases you have, and different time schedules. So obviously also when we go up very early to catch a plane, which over COVID hasn't been so much the case, then the day looked differently than being in the office. And I think also one of the great things I like very much in working with ETC is that no day looks ever the same.
That's really interesting. I think we'll come back to that obviously in our conversations as well. Final one then, and this is again is a bit more abstract, and I know you love these abstract questions. For what is it that you are most grateful?
Well, to be honest, I think it really comes down being grateful that I can live in peace and that I'm in good health, and also the ones that I love are in good health, and that we can do what we want to do without having constraints on.
Heidi, I would like to move on now to our more substantive part of this podcast and ask you a little bit, maybe before we talk about you and yourself, maybe just to introduce us to what is the ETC. What is the ETC? What does it do?
Absolutely. Well, with pleasure. ETC, as you have already said, stands for European Theatre Convention and is an international arts organization for European theatre. And we are an organization that represents European theatres as in venues, as in publicly funded theatres, and whether that means it's national theatres, city theatres, theatres working with a fixed ensemble of actors, a theatre that reproduces a repertory, or a public theatre that works in the co-production mode across Europe. That is up to the individual structure, and we are the place for those organizations together to represent European theatre towards anyone within Europe and outside of Europe, and also we do. And that's why theatres join ETC and look to be working with us. We are initiating artistic collaboration. It's a place to look for professional development and simply represent and advocate also for a strong European theatre sector.
And is there a membership? Is what kind of scale are we talking about here?
Yes, we are a membership organization, or we gather nearly 60 theaters in 31 countries at the moment. So it's really reaching beyond Europe as well, and it's not only bound to, as you can see also from the numbers, to the European Union. So it's really a value-based organization that brings together actors in the European theatre field that wish to work together.
Sounds like a fantastic organization. And you are the executive director of the organization. And we like to delve in more into the personal side of things in the story. So how did you get involved with the ETC? What was your story towards theatre, I guess?
Well, from the very beginning, I always was very intrigued by the international side of collaboration. I'm a cultural scientist, and I worked from the very beginning in the producing parts of making culture and art possible. And then very early on, I met very interesting people in the performing arts, in theatre, and traveled the world with people like the Tiger Lilies or Victoria Thierry Chaplin, and produced also their performances. And that was a very good starting point to see what's possible in making grow artists and making grow ideas and visions, and bringing people together who have the means to do this, to convince others to join in, and to build joint projects that go way beyond only a national interest or one language. And at some point, I was having had the chance to join ETC, and that was a very straightforward way in entering the organization and working for it.
I mean, it seems, also from your answers, especially the dinner party answer, you're clearly someone who likes to connect people and likes to understand and find out about people. And it seems that this is right up the street of ETC, if I'm not mistaken. It's about connecting and finding those ways that people can work together.
Exactly. ETC is one of the European cultural networks. And networks in that sense are places, as the name says. You are there to network, to make relations, and contacts, to meet people you can eventually have an interest in, to further collaborate, discuss something. But also it's about trust and confidence, that you have a safe space where things can be tested, where you're not immediately judged by. I would also say to have a space that is to some extent also without competition, so that gives you the freedom to push boundaries. And I think that's really what ETC is about. And in the end, it always comes down to personal relations, and building those with people that you can move forward together, and that are supporting your ideas, but you also support their ideas, and you think beyond your own interests. I think that's the key to it all.
It's part of it, certainly the sort of slightly more, I don't know if it's the correct word to use, but the slightly more sort of political side of the convention does sound, it sort of rings bells for the conventional unions, which, you talk of advocacy for theatre, and I guess being able to weigh in as a pretty heavy gun. We think of theatres being themselves a collection of people, maybe on a local level, of artists and creators and administrators, etc. But then actually to group those large institutions together in a collective conversation is probably quite powerful.
It's powerful, yes, but also it's about being very concrete, and it's about finding a common ground of interests, first of all, that you can articulate. And that's in our case also for theatres. It hasn't been something was given to us like on a plate and saying, well, there you go, because we all believe in it. And I think also on a European scale, talking about theatre in Europe has for a long time always been very much pushed on this side, because it's been bound to be nationally located. You have national artists, you have languages that are placed in one country, and on a European cultural scale, also the whole way how Europe supports and finances culture, it's always going back to the national member states, because Europe has no mandate in that sense to support culture, but only for actions that are supportive. And in that sense, also what we realized over recent years, theatre as a sector started to become stronger in the sense that we were able, little by little, to find those common grounds that we felt very important to bring forward towards politicians, but also to identify common elements that we as an industry are also connecting one and another. And very much also about whether it was about working conditions, whether it's about structures to support our very existence, the infrastructure on how the industry or the sector is built. And there we see a lot of different versions across Europe. And also the fact that simply it's really hard to grasp, well, how many plays are there produced in Europe? How many theaters do we actually have in Europe? And no one was really able to answer this question because in each country, data and those kind of information are gathered in different ways. You can't really compare it. It's a long process, and that's why I think also it's been really a huge achievement that the European Commission has published last summer the first study on the situation of theatres in the European Union, starting to tackle those kind of questions and filling the holes in identifying also, first of all, the situation on our sector, its social and economic impact, but also to identify what are we made of. So we actually are a sector that is considered and that also then has the means to receive support and have the support mechanisms that are needed.
Does it have a formal base, and is that where it was born, a country or city, and was it born out of this need? Was there a collective of people who thought, you know what, we need this? I'm not sure if that's too specific a question.
ETC was born and created over 30 years ago in France out of the need and the desire. I think it's more about the desire and the passion to work cross-national, internationally, and to exchange works, to exchange talents, and to collaborate across borders. And that was really also why ETC is still this strong organization today, because it's always been driven by the artists and by the theater professionals themselves to have this place to create new projects together. So it's very artistically driven, our organization, to make happen what we feel is important for our own practice, to be more diverse, vibrant, passionate about looking at different perspectives, bringing in new voices, but also going abroad and meeting new audiences. And when talking about ETC as an organization, we've always been quite dynamic in going step by step also with what's happening around us as an organization. We grew substantially once the Iron Curtain fell after '89, expanding into Eastern Europe, but also then by the time after the 2000 years, when you could see various crises around Europe, ETC was also at a moment where we were reorganizing our future, our perspectives, and slowly we also decided, well, it was maybe the time for us to move away from France, to center ourselves more in the center of Europe, to be more connected with the theaters that are part of ETC, and we moved to Berlin in 2011. And after some time, we then also took the decision to recreate and recreate ETC as an organization in Berlin. And ever since, that also was a very good decision to have done. We were able to do much more things in the ways that we felt are also doing good for the sector, for the whole.
I mean, it's always struck me, going back to what you said earlier, it's always struck me that theatre, unlike other cultural sectors, is still very nationalized, and and obviously that's to do with the very nature of language being so integral to theatre, as opposed to opera, for example, which is the sector that Phil's in, which is much more Europeanized in how everything flows around, and like the museum sector, for example, and I guess. And any kind of collective action, I guess, is very interesting from a theatrical point of view, which is so rooted in national traditions. But my question, I guess, is, you were kind of hinting at it. You'll have all these different theatres with different practices and different ways of working and different traditions, as I say, and ETC tries to collectivize their interests, I guess, sometimes. And what are some of the key issues that come up that you then maybe advocate for?
Well, not surprisingly, I think right now a huge focus on our work is towards sustainability. How can we transform the way we produce theatre? We speak also in theatre about the need to change dramatically the ways we can save the planet. So any ways to create a more sustainable, friendly theatre in the way we produce on stage, how we are running our organizations, and also how the buildings we work in are operated. Those are massive questions, actually, how this transformative process takes place. Obviously, also questions on diversity are very keen to all the discussions that we are having. Whose stories are we telling? How are we represented? Who is deciding? So that's questions that are really along everything that we do, and obviously also the digital transformation, how we as an art form in the 21st century, but also, again, as public cultural organizations, what kind of services do we offer? How do we reach our audiences? Are we using digital means? To what extent? How is this, again, also transformed into the way we manage theaters? That's key questions that are tackled along the way in all of our artistic projects, in the way we look at the needs to step up the skills also that are needed to be looking at the entire chain of people working in the huge multidisciplinary group of ensembles. We have houses, there are like 300, 500, up to 1,000 people working. So this is, they're huge factories. And how this is all part of the cultural and creative industries, how this is supported, how are we speaking about this ourselves in exchange with our partners on European level, and how can we move this forward across Europe in taking everyone at their pace with us. I think that's what keeps us very busy when we meet. We have 2 conferences a year, and those are the key questions. And alongside this, I think that's very important also, it's always the question, how can we make this actually very practically? What are the artistic projects that come along with it? And I think it's very exciting because every artistic project that we create, produce, initiate within ETC is always following its own logic. So it's always starting from an idea that someone has, and then we look, how can this be made or adapted so it fits the local structures, the local possibilities, so that we have a meaningful exchange and collaboration.
And could you perhaps give an example of what you mean by this?
For example, yes, one project that keeps running now for 12 years is Young Europe. So it's also a project that is at the core of what we do, focusing on developing a new European drama repertory for young audiences, so with and for the young generation. And this works, for example, in such a model that we have set out to work in artistic teams, always 2 to 3 theaters, meeting in a larger group of up to 8 or 9 venues across Europe, looking at common themes that we will all share, and then devising from this and commissioning new classroom plays or / other forms of performances, plays to be presented for young audiences. And then in the creative process, we are really collaborating for 2-3 years on making those kind of texts, of creating them, of devising the production process that works then in various countries. The artistic teams are mixed. And in the end, the goal is always, obviously, how can this text fit also for an audience in another country, but brings in more, like a universal vision also that speaks to the young generation. And how can we add something that doesn't exist in the canon of the stories that are out there yet? And the current one is the 4th edition of Young Europe, which also was awarded a couple of weeks ago, a European award by Art Explorer as one of the innovative projects across Europe to reach out to new audiences. And that was very fantastic and huge recognition for the work, because we focus in this edition on diverse voices and non-dominant voices of emerging playwrights who are also mentored by playwrights that have this special type of background, to really look at those questions in a very focused way, and to share then the learnings we made with the wider community also.
Of theatres from a huge expanse. How have you noticed the collective conversation change? You're having conversations with theatres about sustainability, about diversity, digital readiness. Over the last few years, everyone's been dealt a card, haven't they? COVID, the situation in Ukraine, cost of living at the moment. Have you noticed that the conversations that you're having with theatres have changed at all over the last 4 years because of the sort of global situation?
Oh, definitely. It, especially those key subjects, the way we have the conversations, the intense, it's really intensified, and it's accelerated in a way also that we were able to professionalize the way we are dealing with the subjects, the knowledge that has been generated, and the use, whether it's how we are able to transform our way of creating in a more sustainable way, how are we dealing with diversity questions, and obviously also the digital readiness. There's an openness that is really something that is not striking, but it's really given also a very good ground to share those conversations in people that are very open-minded, even though everyone comes from its own starting place with its own backgrounds. And this is something I think what we noticed, being able with ETC also to facilitate those kind of conversations, to be a reference point and to connect, like you say, to leading developments, but also to key influential places that are really ahead of our time, or to have a critical look, obviously also at things, to correct ourselves. I think that's very crucial to take wise decisions also, because I think what's really important is our resources to apply have not been doubled or tripled by the means we would actually need to. So we need to be wise in taking the good decisions to still be relevant also in the years to come. And I think it's what COVID has shown, it's about the survival also of the sector. It's been very easy to shut us down, and it's not been easy to come up with. And that's why I think also your project with the bridge, it's very courageous, it's ambitious, and I wish you all the best of luck. Huh? But it's, like you said, not an easy adventure to do, to set up a new cultural venue and a permanent place these days. It probably has never been, but.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, and there are many. It's not just financial. It's also, I mean, with regards to, I don't know, the organization finances, but I also mean like the public coffers, the public finances are low in general, and then there's environmental concerns, exactly, and people have often said, as we've been through this project, yeah, it's difficult. This is a very difficult climate to exactly establish a new institution.
Yes, I think it's about priorities always, huh? And this is obviously also where questions also about leadership, about how we change, also looking at the world and what we in our positions then in the theaters as public organizations, what's our mission and how we are using the responsibility that we are given also to change the world in the parts that we are responsible for. I think that's very important to consider also.
That was an important topic on our last podcast as well. I think the fact that certainly in terms of globally for being sort of responsible, sustainable, economically as well as environmentally, one of the biggest factors that theatres can play a part in is the positive message of change, socially, ecologically, etc.
Yes, it's the message, but it's also, I think, then looking at the wider cultural ecosystem also where we are at. Why is it still important to have theatres? And I think COVID really has shown the need of a place for people to come together in all its various forms. Then what kind of performances are put on stage, the meaningful exchange, the inspiration that you are able to transmit to the public, to the audience when they are coming to see it, and then whether we also are able to use obviously all new technology that is out there. And I think that's just very important to consider. It's a very interdisciplinary art form that brings people together, and that gives you also a way to look beyond your daily routine, looking again what you asked me before, because it's so easy to fall into a trap or of getting out of something. And now in our times of social media, where we have only a couple of emojis to express our opinion, I mean, it's very reduced in the way we think, the way we are able to have a time span as well to dedicate to a certain topic, to create your own reflection. And that's why I think sitting for 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours without looking at a smartphone, or dedicating time to use your thinking capacities, is a very important skill also to exercise and to have a place to do so.
Do you have in the convention, do you have collective conversations about audiences? I mean, you're sort of touching on it there, but I do wonder, and maybe it's even, you could almost phrase it as advice to Ed maybe on in setting up the bridge. It's like, I suppose, how do you know as a theatre or even as a group of theatres that you're putting on the right material that people are going to come to, that people are going to say, do you know what, screw my Netflix series that I'm halfway through tonight, I want to go and see that piece because it's telling that story in that way by these people. I guess it's the age-old question really that we've been asking since way before COVID and way before audience numbers have dropped so significantly, which they have over the last 5 years, is how do we bring them in? How do we get people to come?
I think that's always the question, and when we are talking about diversifying theater as an art form, but also as a place and to be representative enough. The question is also like, how diverse is your audience? And your audience is only as diverse as what you're putting on and by whom you're putting it on. So it's about, again, identification. Who can identify with what you're proposing? So it really goes hand in hand. And looking at those kind of questions, diversifying means to have a good diverse program, people who make it, the professionals, but the public is as important as also the partners are who are supporting your work. So this is really an ongoing question also that we are constantly discussing along our conversations, but also there are key moments, obviously. And there are huge developments also, whether then it comes down to certain methodologies or aspects, and to keep really in constant exchange about this. I think that's crucial. And then also there are local differences when you want to produce something for an international audience. Well, you need to consider certain aspects, obviously, also. So not every play is made also for an international audience. So that's something to consider.
And I hope not too negatively asked, does everyone, or do you find that there is kind of commonality in the problems all the organizations face? For example, the dwindling audience numbers, if that's a thing, or and is there ever, do you sometimes find it hard to find agreement on what are the priorities that you should focus on?
To say finding it hard to agree on, no, I think the priorities, there's a common understanding really of what globally we are faced with, and that those are the same challenges. And I think that's also the beauty of, well, running theaters in one or the other countries. There's a similar way of doing it. So there's a direct also interaction, because the common interest is we want to put on interesting performances that are artistically an inspiration for yourselves, for the audience, and a love and a passion for theater. So this is really where we start having the conversations and an openness again, also to look at different aspects that make theater in itself richer, and also that brings again the relevance to your own organization and then towards your own audiences. And then looking obviously across the 31 countries, there are many, many differences. And we hardly agree on everything all the time, but to have constructive conversations, I think that's the reason why the different partners from all those countries also come along and are interested in those kind of conversations, because you sometimes then also go back with certain information you wouldn't have expected. So it's really also being open to the unknown. I think that helps you to inspire your own work, or to have conversations with your own national funders or your own stakeholders differently. So it's really about enriching your own processes, your own work, and the results also on how we can do theater in Europe together.
Is there any talk on rationalization? And by rationalization, I mean, how can we work more efficiently as a theatre, being that theatre is quite a expensive process, and you have a costume that then is used once and then goes into a costume store and then maybe is not seen again for another 15 years, and this kind of, and sets is kind of the same thing. Is there any discussions about that, thinking about sustainability here?
Oh yes, definitely. That's a huge topic also, how to reuse, in particular now when talking about environmental sustainability, but also obviously constraints and efficiency. Every organization is run with a certain budget. So there are parameters that are very strictly to be considered also. So it's alongside, obviously also with the artistic freedom and expression, a constant negotiation and discussion, balancing of how to move forward in a more efficient, but also more conscious way.
Heidi, just one more question for me. I think again, maybe just as in my capacity as co-host, pointing things towards Ed, is now a good time to set up a new theatre in Europe?
I think it's always a good time.
Yeah.
If otherwise you would have started like this, no one ever would move forward. No, definitely, it's we always need new inspiration. And the other day I was listening also to a similar podcast or an interview on the radio by a documentary center that works here in Berlin very successfully for the last 20 years. And they have been doing great projects and also a very, very substantial work with especially Ukrainian artists. But they are still lacking as well a venue or a permanent place to have rehearsals or stock their material. But nevertheless, I think it's really about this energy to keep going that I found also very impressive. And that's how you set up your own work in a way, and making things happen while you're looking. Maybe the venue will come in 5 years and 10 years, but you're constantly trying to find a solution. If you wouldn't pursue this, it will certainly not happen at all. So it's really about the journey of making something happen, to pursue your ideas and to push boundaries.
No, thanks for that, Heidi. It's good reminder that the journey is important, absolutely, and it's been a fascinating journey. Maybe we'll make a play out of it at some point. Maybe just to wrap up, what are the plans for ETC for this coming year? What are the big kind of highlights that you have on the horizon?
Well, I'm very happy that we have associated with the International Online Theatre Festival. So that's coming up very soon this spring, where we have performances presented in the digital sphere, coming mostly from a very large-scale European environmental project called Stages, the restaging of the play by Katie Mitchell, which is now shown around various theaters in Europe. And this is happening. Then we will have another major conference coming up in May in Opole in Poland on sustainability and digital ways of creating theatre, where we present a new approach that is currently tested also with a large-scale project run by the Oulu University in northern Finland, together with 14 theatres across Europe, where we're looking at a new test bed in designing, devising performances using digital means, and to look at this from a dramaturgical point of view, to look how this fits with stage design, but also audience development. So I'm very curious on this. We are having as well our European Theatre Academy coming up this summer in Avignon, during the festival in Avignon, which has become a very strong moment to bring together the next generation of theatre makers from across our membership theatres, but also from the wider sector. And I really look forward to this as some key moments.
Sounds fascinating, especially the digital work. I'm really looking forward to seeing the outcome of that. Phil, did you have a final question there? I saw you perk up your...
It all sounds incredibly exciting. And is there a way that people, maybe even just members of the public or who would consider themselves audience members, is there a way that they can have a say, engage with the ETC? Are there events that they can go to? Or
Some of our events are publicly streamed or recorded and all available online. And we've got a huge online library now available as well that includes European theatre plays, many videos, interviews, articles on all of the fascinating topics we touched upon. And I think that's also a place on stage across European stages. You can see on our website really what's on in the various theatres, the discourses, the different projects, exciting performances for types of audiences, the artists, but really to take an interest. And our website, I think, is really a good entry point in this. And then you see also artists can apply for the artist in residency program, or eventually also come along to Avignon to meet us there and to engage in discussions also that take place virtually across the globe.
Amazing. So europeantheatre.eu, if you're interested, go there.
Voila, that's it.
Heidi, thank you so much for coming on today and explaining this all to us. It's really nice actually to have this European idea of theatre, which, as you say, is so deeply rooted in these natural traditions. To have a kind of a focus point for a Europeanized sector is really good. So thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for this wonderful conversation, and all the best of luck to the bridge.
Thank you. And
the
Phil,
two of you.
thank you very much. And Phil, we'll see you next month.
See you next time.